we will start with Ian Crockett.
Thank you. Thank all of you for coming. Happy to see you. I'm sure a lot of you have already voted, but that's okay. A little bit about me. I grew up here, raised my family here, started as a teacher. In fact, I taught at Thomas Johnson High School. And from there, I taught at Mount St. Mary's, taught in the public school later. I was a school administrator at Linganore High School, Brunswick High School, Walkersville High School. So my whole life has been surrounded by Frederick County. I do appreciate what it means. Beyond that, I've served 20 years in public office, 8 years as a county commissioner, 12 years as a delegate representing 3A.
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
What?
Can you speak up a little bit, slow? I know, the fans
I know, it's pretty hard. I could run across the street and get a microphone, but we have one. Anyhow, I spent 8 years as a county commissioner and 12 years as a delegate representing Frederick City 3A. Was on the Appropriations Committee, worked on the budget for the state of Maryland. I understand budgets, I know how they work. The last 2 years I was on the Economic Matters Committee. We started a business caucus to improve economic development, create more jobs, and that worked very well. It was sanctioned by the Senate and the House, and there was a commission that was established, and it produced some interesting and good recommendations. Recently, I've served on the commission for funding public education school buildings, and just finished that this past year. What I'm trying to say is I have a lot of experience. I'd like to be your councilman at large, and I appreciate your support.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here. I'll try my best to project. I'm getting over a cold, so it might be a little challenging, but I'll make it work. So again, my name is Devontae Duffin. No surprise, candidate for county council at large. Born and raised here in Frederick County, so I have a true passion for this community that I live in. I'm a firm believer in servant leadership, and that's what brought me into getting involved in this community the way I am today. Graduate of Tuscarora High School in 2012, served as our Necktie Club president. For those that don't know what the Necktie Club is, which is a group of young guys sponsored by the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. We go to school dressed up, and they teach us how to behave in public, how to participate in interviews and things of that nature. I guess we're going to go out here. I won't charge that to my time, I'll be quick. And so while being a part of the Necktie Club, I was actively involved at Tuscarora High School, later went on to Frederick Community College, where I served as the president of our Student Government Association and the student representative on the Presidential Search Committee. And if you've been watching the news, we've been having some issues with the president out of Frederick Community College, and I ask that you don't charge that to my judgment or my character as a person when going to the polls. And so after serving at Frederick Community College, I went on and I served on the Human Relations Commission, where I spent, I believe, 4 years serving on the commission, fighting for the causes that matter to the community. And so the things that matter to me the most are education, small businesses, a vibrant community, fighting this opioid crisis that we have going on in our community, and really bringing some diversity into Frederick County. For those that don't know, there has never been a minority to serve on the Board of County Commissioners nor the County Council. And I believe today is the time, now is the time for diversity in Frederick County. And so my favorite quote in closing is, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So I do ask that as you go to the polls, that you allow us to take our seat at the dais. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming, and anybody else who's taking the time to watch this evening. It's hard to believe that after all these months, we're only a few days away from the primary election. I'm Kai Hagan. A lot of you know me in one way or another. I've been an active part of our community for the 23 years that I've been here, ever since literally 2 weeks after we moved here. I have a lifelong connection going back to the community since I was 4 years old, but my family and I moved here to stay forever in 1995. And ever since that time, I've been very involved, writing columns for the newspaper, having radio shows, organizing at the community level on land use, the environment, solid waste, other things. And of course, many people know I'm a former county commissioner, so I spent 4 years as a Frederick County Commissioner on a board that was bipartisan and had every kind of vote combination you could imagine, but that did a lot of good things. I didn't agree with everything we did as a board, but overall I'm very proud of my record as a county commissioner and our record as a board. What happened after that? Not so much, but I have a very deep and intimate knowledge of Frederick County government, all of the major divisions and departments, sat on a lot of the boards and commissions over the years. But it's all infused with a commitment to getting people more engaged, more involved to the civic process with an eye on the environment, public education, public safety. And, you know, when people sometimes try to say somebody's a single issue candidate. All I can say is the biggest issue for me has always been land use, only because it affects everything else. Transportation, taxes, education, school funding, public safety, protecting the environment, everything. So for the last 7 years since I was a county commissioner, I've been as involved as I ever was before. And if you're not familiar with what I've been doing, writing, or the radio show or anything, I encourage you to find out more on my website and our campaign blog. There's a lot of information there.
Hi, my name is Susan Reeder Jessing. Thanks so much for organizing this. It's a great, this organization is near and dear to my heart. My mom was very involved in the Women's Democratic League, so it's an honor to speak here. I love this county. I was born and raised here, and I want to give the opportunity to give back to a community that has been so good to me. It's truly an honor and a passion of mine. I grew up on a farm. Produce farm with my family. We worked it every summer. I understand how important agriculture is to this county, and I would work locally with the farmers to make sure we work closely with them to satisfy their needs. I've been married to my husband. I'm a TJ grad. I've been married to my husband at Lawrence for 33 years. He went to Frederick High, and I have 2 adult kids that went to Middletown High School. And so education has been a very important part of my life in Frederick County. When 10th grade biology, my teacher there, my biology teacher, helped me find my passion that has led my career in science. And so I understand how important the connection between the teacher to the student is, as well as any other adult mentor. After that, I worked as a bench scientist for 8 years. So having that understanding in science helps me understand and look at many different things that are going on with our environment. That's another passion of mine. It's something that's very concerning at me, especially what's happening with things being thawed, and the things I read about is the viruses and the bacteria that will come about. I spent the next 20 years, I'm talking about my education. I went to Hood College, got my bachelor's degree, went back at night, got my MBA. So I spent 20 years on the business side of science. I worked on multi-million-dollar budgets, as well as did strategic planning, business development. I also worked in economic development with the city. I knew how to grow jobs. I was on the board with the local incubator, the Frederick Innovative Technology Center, for 11 years, and was responsible and helped out grow many, many jobs in Frederick County. And my husband owns a small business in Frederick for 30 years, so I know what small business owners face every day. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for being here. I really appreciate seeing you all. So as you know, I'm Mark Long, and I live in Emmitsburg with my wife Jill and my dog Duncan, who loves to be walked around the town and down to the new dog park. And in addition to running my business as a home inspector, in recent years I've been involved a lot in affordable housing issues. I serve on the Frederick County Affordable Housing Council. I also am on the board of directors of Interfaith Housing Alliance, who create affordable housing. I'm also on the board of directors of Envision Frederick County, and also on the board of a new organization called Kitsuni, who intends to provide supportive housing services for adults with developmental disabilities who are otherwise falling through the cracks at present, such as folks with autism spectrum disorder and executive function disorder and the like. So that's just a little bit of things I've been doing recently. But I was born and raised here, lived here all my life, pretty much, a few other places, but always kept coming back to Frederick County because I think it's a wonderful place to be and live. And I want to be sure that it remains a wonderful place to live and work and play and raise families and retire for many generations to come. And to achieve that, there's a number of priorities we have to focus on. Number one would be to ensure we have excellent schools for our children. Secondly, we have to make sure we manage development responsibly and adhere to smart growth principles. We want to be sure we emphasize economic development and particularly create more opportunities for those folks, the 32% of our population that are barely making ends meet. We all have to come together to find solutions for the opioid crisis. And we have a lot of issues facing us, and it's our responsibility to elect leaders that have the wisdom and knowledge to address those issues, and I think I'm one of those. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. I'll use this so everybody can hear the questions. These questions were submitted by our members, and we will alternate who answers questions first. So the first question will go to Galen Claggett to begin, and the question is, what major legislation would you support or promote to make Frederick more affordable for median income families and the Alice population in Frederick County?
Well, that's obviously a multifaceted issue. One of the things we can do is overhaul and better work our economic development program to create more jobs, higher paying jobs. I think that's paramount as far as really improving the status of everybody in the county. I think that what we have done has been adequate, but it's not broad enough. And so if I am lucky enough to get elected, I would promote a program that would increase that. Otherwise, I would expand and work on the existing programs we have and work hard with the state and federal government to bring more to Frederick County. Thank you.
First off, moderately priced dwelling units, and so a developer can pay a certain fee to get out of building certain units in their development. And so in my mind, that's what we call gentrification. And so we put people, we have rich people living here and the poor people living down here, and we're keeping people from being able to afford to live in these neighborhoods. And so number one, it would be either looking at that fee, whether we're going to raise the fee or eliminate the fee so they're not able to buy out of building a certain amount of units that are affordable to people. Number two would be really looking at a way to build education resources so that people have the tools necessary to be able to buy houses instead of renting houses. And so feeding off of the Frederick County Action Agency and the program that they have for first-time buyers so that people know that they're prepared to go into home buying and that they have things that they're prepared, tax classes and things of that nature, so that people are ready to buy a home and they know the appropriate steps to take to get there.
This is one of the most important issues we're facing in the county, not only because of what it is by itself, but how it's affected by and connected to everything else. 1/3 of the people are, as he said, Alice, asset limited, income constrained, people who are working and living in this county but can't afford the basic cost of living and are a paycheck, a busted up car, a health crisis from bankruptcy or homelessness or some other personal crisis. 1/3 of the people in this county, and this is a wealthy, well-educated county. The problems are manifested a lot of ways, and they're not going to be solved by any one thing. The work of the Interfaith Housing Council, the Affordable Housing Council, Interfaith Housing Alliance, all those is good, the MPDUs, all that, but there are a whole bunch of tools, and it's going to take a lot of different things. It's a multifaceted approach. There is no one silver bullet, and we have a bunch of tools in planning and negotiations and annexation agreements to get more, following smart growth principles, to get more multifamily homes, more smaller homes, along with the accessory dwelling units. It's a complicated issue, but there are many solutions we're not utilizing.
Yeah, the Alice report not only identified youth as a senior population was also a huge concern in there as well. There's a lot of seniors want to age at home, so that all pulls into that number. I afforded a house here when I first bought my first house. I want my kids to do the same. Right now, builders are required to have 12% to go to moderate price dwellings, or they pay a fee. And that's a very tough thing to balance to see which one is the advantage. You know, does the fee cause price to go up or what happens? But we need to partner with local organizations, Interfaith Housing, as well as the builders to make sure they are sticking to their commitment of providing affordable housing options. I mean, there's a good example on 520 North Market Street of the building that was built there. Has a lot of apartments, provides more affordable housing. We're way behind. We're over 5,000 houses behind building affordable housing in Frederick County, and we need to do something. But working together with these partners and stakeholders that have an interest in it benefits everyone. Thank you.
So affordable housing is something I've been working a lot at, and it is a complex issue. There's no simple solution that requires many different solutions coming together. As far as eliminating the fee that developers pay, we grappled with that at the Affordable Housing Council for months on end. We spent hours and hours talking about that. We eventually decided to raise the fee and keep the fee, because that fee that developers pay can go into the Housing Initiative Fund that then goes to specialists in providing affordable housing. The average market developer cannot do affordable housing, can barely do it, and cannot do it effectively and efficiently. So that money that they're paying can go to specialists in affordable housing and create more affordable housing than otherwise would be done. But we also have to reconfigure our training structure to those folks that are the Alice population and get them more in touch with the jobs of the future, so they're making a better wage so they can afford to live here, and also effective public transit. Thank you.
For the second question, we'll begin with Cavante Duckett. As the county-wide representation on the county council, how do you plan on building consensus and bipartisanship within the council?
Easy question. Hey, folks, one thing I believe in is building intentional relationships, purposeful relationships. That's what, I mean, it's going to take hard conversations. We're not always going to agree, but guess what? Who does? None of us. We're never going to come to an agreement to say, hey, look, my way is right, your way is wrong. It doesn't work that way. So really, we have to put on our big boy pants and say, hey, look, we want to do what's best for the people of this county. And when we remove ourselves, you know, us politicians filled with a lot of pride and egos, when we move that out of the way and only focus on the common good, the greater good of the community that we love, then we'll see change begin to happen in this county. But when we continue to bump heads with one another, even with people in our own party, hey, guess what's going to happen? That stuff is going to trickle down, and we're not going to get anything done. So if we want to get things done, we have to be able to work together. We have to be able to have those tough conversations that for far too often we've been afraid to have. Why? Because Republicans can't agree with Democrats. That's BS if you ask me. We are all elected to serve you, and that's what I'll do on the county council. Thank you.
Well, county government hasn't always been this partisan, and it shouldn't be. It really wasn't until 2010. Jan Gardner and I were 2 out of 5 members and the only Democrats on the Board of County Commissioners I was on. And I bet we were on the winning side of 85, 90% of all the votes that mattered. And that's because we didn't vote in a pattern of 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. We probably had every single voting combination that you can imagine, and because this shouldn't be partisan. Even if we're running in a partisan election, we're going to run 2 of us against 2 Republicans. When you get there, you work for the benefit of the county. You disagree on some things, you agree on some things, you work to develop a consensus, engage the citizens, and find the solutions and the common ground and the compromise that makes it possible to move forward with something. You don't always get what you want. I sat next to Blaine Young on the Board of County Commissioners for 9 months, and we worked together and agreed on some things together. But you know, this is not a partisan issue. It shouldn't be. There is no partisan matter for smart growth, clean water, good schools, you name it.
I think I mentioned I work in private industry for a long time, and I had a very, one of my favorite bosses always told us when we arrived to a meeting to leave the attitude at the door, which I believe in very adamantly. I've spent over 20 years in business development, building relationships with my client, working with internal staff in order to solve their problems and meet their deadlines. I would bring the same ability to the council. It wouldn't be political, because one thing you have to always remember is who you work for. When you're elected to any position, you work for the citizens. You don't work for a party, you work for that citizens. And I would make sure I would bring that understanding and bring the ability to work with anyone. I can work with anyone no matter what party they are. And I think through the years that has really benefited me a lot. It shouldn't matter what you're doing, but once you're decided up there, you shouldn't be bickering, because businesses and other people outside the county are watching. So it's very important that we have a good impression of what our leadership is doing in the council in order to solve problems. Thank you.
So as I briefly mentioned in my introductory remarks, I work in a number of organizations with a variety of people, and we're on both sides of the political scheme, all kinds of backgrounds. I've worked with many organizations in the past, not just recently. At one point in time, I was on an executive board that oversaw all the churches of our congregation for the whole Northeast United States and Canada. And I've worked with many, many different people in a variety of settings. And it's all about listening to the other people, respecting the other people, trying to understand where they're coming from. You know, make your point, make your case, but try to understand where the other people are coming from. But in the end, we all have to work together for the common good, all focus on what's best for the most people of Frederick County, and try to arrive at some solutions that move us all ahead together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm the only guy up here with 20 years of experience working across the aisle. 8 years as a county commissioner. During that first term, there were 4 Republicans and Democrats. We rewrote the whole county structure by cooperating and brought what I think the county into the next era of development. In the House of Delegates, I worked across the aisle, got all kinds of legislation passed. I know how to do that. I have 31 years in business. I didn't get there by not knowing how to work with other people. So if you're looking for someone who has experience, I'm the one who has that. Thank you.
For our third question, we'll begin with Kai Hagan. Currently, people in Emmitsburg have limited public transportation options. What would you do to expand transportation options in Frederick County?
Well, when I was a county commissioner, we worked on this issue, and we did make improvements, and we did extend routes to some of the other communities. The fact is, I mentioned earlier the Alice report, and the third of the people who can barely afford to live here. The same income, or even higher income, is harder in Frederick County than in a place like Montgomery County, and that's because a lot of the social services related to the most expensive bills, not only housing, but transportation, daycare, healthcare, are more expensive here. And transit is one of the biggest differences. We do not have very good public transit outside of a few specific areas and routes. If we are adhering to smart growth principles, we will grow in a way that is more supportive of public transit, because it will be less sprawling, less auto-dependent. That changes the economics of public transit and makes it more viable. You're creating a better mixture of housing at the right places. Public transit is something that happens for 2 reasons. 1, because you have a real commitment to make it work, and 2, because you don't plan everything else as if it's all built around the car. And we can do that, but that takes a real commitment. I have that commitment.
And this is a real tough issue. I mean, Frederick County has the biggest land mass of any county in the state of Maryland, and a lot of that is in northern Frederick County. And there's a lot of people not only that need it for just going to work every day, there's a lot of people that need it to go to their hospitals or go to their doctor's appointments, etc. We've done a good job of expanding the transit program up there, but I think there's more that we can do and look at different options, get the subject matter experts and get everybody together and figure out what additional things we can do to improve transportation options up in that county, because it's really needed, and there's a lot of roads in that area. I think I'm really happy to hear that in the 2019 budget that there will be 3 new green electric transit buses. So I think that will cut down on the cost and good on the environment of having those possibly going up in that area. Because it's people that want to live where they want to live, seniors want to age where they want to age, and we need to offer options to them to help them get to where they need to be. Thank you.
So I live in Emmitsburg and go up and down 15 all the time, and sometimes as far as Brunswick. So I know what it's like to travel down into other parts of the county. Recently, the county executive did initiate a new trial for some more transit up into Emmitsburg, and so they're watching to see how that does, watching to see how much ridership it gains. So hopefully, if that's successful, I'm sure the intention is that that will be expanded. And in addition to expanding it up into North County, I would like to see it expanded down into Brunswick and South County. But it's going to be an incremental thing. We, try a few trial runs, some pilots, and hopefully we can get the ridership to make it viable, and then gradually expand to other areas. But again, we do need to adhere to smart growth and try to get more businesses and whatever in each of the growth centers, so we don't have to travel so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, obviously, connectivity is paramount in almost anything that we do. So if we work hard, we have to prioritize this as an issue we want to fund. And then we need to work with the state and federal programs to bring money here to do that in addition to what we spend. It's not rocket science. It's a matter of prioritizing and operating under that priority to fulfill the commitment for better public transportation. And remember, we developed this county in and around centers of population. So there's not that kind of sprawl that we're talking about. We're talking about connecting center to center. That's the important thing to think about. Thank you.
Folks, far too often we think of Frederick County as a one-way in, one-way out. And so if you're not coming into the city, then you're not coming into Frederick. And so we really have to look at this thing on a broader scale. That Frederick County is huge, and so when we look at public transportation, we have to make sure it's something that is going to be readily used, that we're not just going to send public transportation to Emmitsburg or to Brunswick or to other part of the counties and it not be used. So we have to make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck. And I do know that currently transit services do for our senior citizens. They travel all over Frederick County, but I think there's a lack of education there. People don't know the services that are available to them to use, and so we have to do a better job at letting people know about the things that are already in place that they have access to. If we don't tell them, they'll never know.
For our next question, we'll start with Susan Rader-Jesse. Currently, new schools being built quickly exceed capacity. What would you do to change this, and should we expect that schools will eventually need portables at some point?
Thanks for the question. This is a really, really tough issue to tackle. Board of Ed has a tough job, and as county council, we can support the initiatives. Population, kids are coming here. They're going to continue coming here, and trying to do as much long-term strategic planning as possible, and working with the school board on their needs. Do we rehab? Do we build? I was in a portable in 3rd grade at Parkway, so that's when it started. No, not really, but I know what it's like. I know the asthma problems my son had in a portable at Middletown High School when he went out in the cold to go to the bathroom. I think these are issues we really have to address and work very closely with the Board of Education. Nobody wants to redistrict their kids. They want their kids to go. So that's something we shouldn't mandate, but we should consider, and it should be part of the conversation. So is there a quick fix? No, because my kids went to Myersville. There was 4 or 5 portables, and now Myersville is under capacity. So it's a very tough thing, and it takes collaboration and working hard together to help get ahead of this problem. Thanks.
Thank you. So yeah, this is a tough issue. Currently, there's approximately 20,000 homes in the pipeline that were approved between 2010 and 2014 that are going to put tremendous stress on our public school system and capacity for the system. There's not a whole lot we can do about those already in the system, other than, do as much planning as we can to get schools in place before the crunch really hits. But going forward, when we approve new developments, at whatever time that is, we need to be sure that we have adequate capacity in the plans for school capacity to be available and timed with the rollout of the developments. Everything should be in place so that we aren't always behind. Of course, that's very challenging, and it's going to take a lot of planning, a lot of forethought, but we should have a very strong, adequate public facilities ordinance to be sure that we do have adequate school capacity and roads and libraries and all of that.
Thank you. Well, first let me say I just finished, as I said earlier, serving on the 21st Century Commission at the state level for funding school construction. And there are a lot of good recommendations in that package, and the one thing I would do is work to make sure that we implement those recommendations. Beyond that, I think we have to look at being cost effective. We have to control costs. The state committed to $250 million a year back after the Cobb Commission reported out its findings, and Frederick High School costs $120 million. So costs like that really limit what we can do. The other thing is we have to look at districting. Everybody is entitled to an education, but we have to be careful about how we do that so that we don't have schools underpopulated and schools overpopulated. And that's a tough issue, but it has to be addressed. Thank you.
Far too often, I think we as a human body, we're very reactive versus proactive. So we know that development is going to happen. We know that houses are going to be built. We know that our schools are going to be overcrowded. And so we have a job. We have to do something about it. No child deserves to be in a portable. Every child deserves equal opportunity in education. That's the bottom line. I tell you one thing. When they built Tuscarora High School, redistricting, something that no one likes, but guess what? We got used to it. We were supposed to be going to Frederick High School. I would have loved to have been a cadet, but they moved us out on the opposite end of town to Tuscarora High School, and where we met new friends. We built new relationships. It's okay to be redistricted. I don't understand why this is such a scary idea, but at the end of the day, if that keeps students out of portables, then hey, that's what I would like to see happen. Thank you.
Overcrowded schools and portables are both a sign of bad planning. I mean, it's really that simple. This is something the community controls. There's nothing inevitable about it. We have to stop treating it like it is. We have planning operating on different planes at the same time. We make one set of decisions without making a responsible set of correlating decisions related to infrastructure, to schools, and everything else. When I was a county commissioner, we worked very hard on that. Built Linganore, a whole bunch of other schools, and school-wide capacity, system-wide capacity was at 90%. Now that doesn't, which was the lowest it had been in a long time. Now that does not mean that there weren't still schools that were overcrowded, and redistricting is part of the conversation about that. But if you move into an area, you've evaluated the school, you've got a neighborhood school your kid could walk to, you also place a high value on not having them spend an hour on a bus going somewhere either, and that's part of the equation. But if we really do things smart, we won't keep getting in a hole by having sprawling development that's permitted before there's complete and adequate funding and a complete and adequate, realistic timeline for the construction of the infrastructure that it takes to prevent this problem. It is totally preventable.
For our next question, we'll begin with Mark Long. Our taxes pay for the county sheriff and the detention center. Do you believe that the 287G program is a good use of taxpayer money?
Well, Sheriff Jenkins will say that the fees they get from the federal government more than offset the costs of the service. I'm not sure whether that's true or not. I believe we should have an independent audit of that whole program to make sure that it's a viable and important service for our community and whether it should continue. There was a study done not too long ago by the Center for Migrant Studies that showed that Frederick City was arresting fewer Hispanics per so many people per thousand or whatever it was. They were arresting less than Frederick County. Frederick County is arresting more Hispanic people than Frederick City. That says to me that there may be racial profiling going on. So I think that should be looked into. I think the whole program should be looked into. I don't think we need to go out of our way to find people to deport them. Everyone that comes here is looking for opportunity because they're coming from situations that are very stressed out and very bad sometimes. So we shouldn't discourage those folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, this is not an issue that we're going to deal with. The sheriff is a separate elected official. He runs his program based on what he thinks he ought to do. Maybe you should pick another sheriff. Beyond that, it's a federal program, and so if the sheriff decides to use it, that's fine. I don't like it, but I think we have to be realistic. Am I going to close the detention center? No, I'm not going to do that. So what I can do is urge some controls, but I will not be able to affect any change because it's unrealistic and it's just not possible to do.
Am I in favor of the 287G program? No, not at all. It's disheartening what the sheriff is doing. Racial profiling is only the beginning. It's sad, folks, and it's sad that we're in this place, in this great country that we call America, the American dream, that this is happening in Frederick County, the place that we all love so much. But the only thing that we can do about it is elect Carl Bickle for sheriff. Hey, I can sit up here and tell you that we can take Chuck Jenkins out and do all these things to try to stop this program, but it's not going to happen. The only thing we can do is go to the polls in November and elect Carl Bickle as sheriff, and then we will see the change happen. But guess what? If Chuck is back in office, I guarantee you the program will stay. We can fight it until we're blue in the face. But when we elect the sheriff, you elect him to do his job. When you elect the county council, you elect us to do a job. And so you can't be too upset with the sheriff when he is doing his job. And so it's going to take us electing Carl Bickle on November the 6th. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to start by wholeheartedly agreeing with what Cavante just said, except for the part about you can't be upset. You can still be upset. There's a lot of reasons to be. This program's been here for what, 8-9 years or so. There's a lot of information about it, and they claim that they've had an independent audit. We don't even have the ability for people to make complaints in a way that is anonymous and can actually be evaluated. The sheriff gets on the radio and says, nobody's complaining, I've got no complaints. Who's going to complain to him if they're vulnerable or they're knowing people who are, they're going to ask for trouble or issues of trust? We could set up a group, somebody else suggested that recently, and I agree, that would take anonymous complaints. But Galen is right. The sheriff is elected, and it's a separate position. The county council, the county executive can use the bully pulpit, can put pressure on, can ask for a truly independent, thorough audit, which could affect the public perception, awareness of the cost. But if a thing is wrong, it's wrong, whether we're making enough money to justify it or not for other reasons. So again, where is Carl? So elect Carl Bickle.
Everything they said. I mean, external audit, independent is a must. I want to know what's happening, where everything is going. I also know I had at a very young age was forced to look at law enforcement when my sister was murdered, and so I know there's a lot of things in law enforcement, things that are going on that the public may not have that information. So I would personally want to dig into that information. I'm very close friends with a doctor that services a lot of the Hillcrest staff, and he has personally told me of the racial profiling that has been going on with his patients. And so I listened to the 280G. I didn't go there the other night, but I listened to the whole thing. And like Kai said, independent growth, that will take place because people don't want to complain. They don't want to. They're afraid. And I heard this directly from their doctor. And so we must do something to protect them because they're citizens. They work here. They live here. We have to protect them. And we must do more. We don't have much power, like Gillen said, to do it, but we can be a voice. And Carl goes without saying, elected. Thank you.
For our next question, we'll begin with Galen Claggett again. How will you encourage diversity in our local... I'm sorry. Yes, that's okay. I will begin the question again. How will you encourage diversity in our local government? Starting again with Galen Claggett.
Well, let me say first, let me tell you that you can look at my business and see diversity. We have, for 31 years, built a business around that concept. We're not prejudiced by any means, and I'm very proud of our record and how we conduct our business. We're a property management business. I voted for all the right diversity issues at the state level. I was a charger at the county level when I was a county commissioner, and we organized the whole county. And when we did that, we kept that concept of diversity in play. That was important. Now, have we been successful? No, but we can still push to improve it. And if I'm elected, I'm certainly going to do that. Thank you.
Well, number one, we can start by electing Cavante Duffy. That's number one. Hey, let's be real. I mean, we can look at any forum I've been a part of, and we can talk about diversity until we're blue in the face. But there's only a few of us that can really talk about this issue. Like I said, I served on the Human Relations Commission, member of the NAACP, member of local Mountain City Lodge number 382 down on West on St. Street. I believe in community. And so one thing that we need to do is give a voice to the people that have been left out for far too often. I'm not only an African-American man, but I'm 24 years old. So let's talk about diversity. So I tell you, and I'll be quick, one thing that I'm learning about Frederick County, knocking on doors, it's hard to be a black man and run for office in Frederick County. I need you all to know that this thing is real. And it's nothing to take light of, but we have some real issues in this county that we have to address. And if we don't elect people that look like the people that live in this community, guess what? They're never going to come out and be a part of anything because we don't trust. And so if there's a lack of trust, how can you build that relationship? So we need trust back in government. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think that Frederick County is changing. People who've been here for a long time know that, but it's changing. And a big part of the change, there are a lot of ways in which it's changing, is that it's becoming dramatically more diverse, ethnically diverse in many ways. People from all over the world, different language groups. We had something like a 300% increase in Latino, in population in Frederick County in a relatively short period of time. We do need to do, as Kavani said, more to make sure that all of those people are represented, participating in the process. But there's all sorts of other ways in which we have to engage them, to reach out to them. And part of it is to make sure that they're all part of a successful and thriving community, that they're seen as stakeholders, that their needs are represented and respected in the decisions that we make about land use and schools and the commitment to safe neighborhoods and good housing and all of that. So it's a complex process. There are people who resist this change. It's coming. I celebrate it. I've lived in some of the most diverse places in the country over much of my life before I moved to Frederick County, and that was the biggest part of the culture shock moving here. But we are changing, and we need to be ready for it and support it.
Cavante, here I am. I'm with you. I'm one of the only woman of 9 running at both sides of County Council at large. I think it's important to have a woman's voice. We have not had a woman on the council in an at-large position, not county exec, for over 8 years. So I think it's time to have that woman. Again, like Cavante, I've dealt with many of the issues women face, all the way in the workplace, everywhere. Personal, I went to Planned Parenthood when I was out out of college, you didn't have insurance. There's so many things you need to have that voice up there as well to understand what is going on. In the county, we don't even keep track of people that put bids in, what minority contracts are going in. So I think it's important that we also make sure we monitor that to make sure minority businesses, small businesses are getting their fair share of the business in the county. So that's another reason that I think we should do that. But here I am, I'm with you, I'm out here and I'm running and I'm trying it. Thanks.
The county is becoming much, much more diverse. In my lifetime, I've seen dramatic changes, and I think they're all good changes. When I was growing up in Thurmont, there would not have been a young man that looked like Cavani walking on the streets, and that's very unfortunate. And we are making headway, and we have to make sure that we continue to make headway. The county should reach out to groups such as, well, the Human Relations Commission is part of the county. We should consult with them on how to move forward. We should reach out to groups like the Asian American Center, the different Hispanic groups, the NAACP, and bring them all together to see if there's other ways that we can reach out and bring in more folks and make it more diverse in all sorts of ways. So it does take time. It takes a lot of change of attitudes. I've seen people change attitudes, but it's a slow process. We have to keep engaging with people and communicate with people and make everyone part of our county family.
Okay, we're going to move into the closing statements now so that we have time so you all have time to speak with the candidates afterward. The candidates will have 1 minute for their closing. So we'll begin with Galen Claggett.
Thank you. I'll take my 1 minute very quickly, in a minute. I think I summed it up early on. I have a lot of experience at the local level in government. 8 years as county commissioner, and 4 of those years I was president of the board of county commissioners. We went through an extraordinary metamorphosis. We changed the whole direction of the county. And I think that's important to recognize. And also my time at the state level with doing budgets, economic development is paramount, I think, when you consider what the county council does and what the role of a county councilman at large is. I would hope you would take all that into account, and I would appreciate your vote if you haven't voted on election day. Thank you.
Again, thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, Women's Democratic League, for hosting us on this evening. It means so much to see you all out in this rain. But I'll get right into it. I am so glad to be in this race. It means so much to me. If you can't tell, I'm passionate. If you can't see my energy, then I don't know if you're looking at me or you're looking behind me, but I am ready to serve this community. And so I ask for your support on June 26th if you have not already voted. And if you had, call somebody else and tell them to vote for me. I won't complain. And so I leave you with this. Malcolm X once said, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I believe now is the time for us to take a stand in Frederick County for the things that we believe in the most. And so the single most issue that's important to me is you all. The issues that matter to you, the citizens of Frederick County, the most. I will work for you, I will listen to you, and I will listen with the intent to understand. So I look forward to serving you all as your next county council member at large. Thank you.
For 23 years in Frederick County, I've been a tireless advocate for the public interest. I think one of the reasons that people who have supported me have continued to in many cases is because they've seen it. They've seen it in what I've written, in the discussions on the radio, in my record as a county commissioner, in my participation on boards and commissions, and the particular perspective. There's not a laundry list of specific issues you can just check off. There are broad philosophical approaches, underlying core values, and ways of thinking about government and the role of an elected official in making decisions, utilizing good process, engaging stakeholders. That's why I've been endorsed, that's the word, thank you, by everyone who's made an endorsement in this campaign so far, including the Frederick County Teachers Association, the Sierra Club, Progressive Maryland, Our Revolution, because they look at that record, they see that consistent personal conduct, professional, political identity as someone who is working always in the public interest and trying to do that in a process-oriented and smart manner.
Thanks again for this opportunity to speak with you all. Take a visit my card. I won't bore you with all my statistics. I know where Frederick County has been, and I want to have some kind of effect working partnerships with everybody where we're going to be so my grandkids can live here and their kids. I'm a current project manager with a vaccine manufacturing company. Growth is a huge issue. I know how, as a project manager what we need to do, and growth affects schools, it affects our environment, it affects everything. So if we get that under control, I would work tirelessly with everyone to try to tackle that big problem. I think we can get a great deal accomplished with working with anybody that's elected. I would work with anyone, no matter who the county executive or who is on the council, because I truly believe we have more in common than what divides us. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.
So thank you all for being here, and thanks to the Women's Democratic League for hosting this. So I think it's all about opportunity and making sure everyone has opportunity to prosper and thrive. Every child should have the opportunity for the best education possible, and in a school building and not a portable. Every worker should have the opportunity to have a decent job with a living wage so they can afford to live here. All of us should have the opportunity to live in thriving, vital communities with affordable housing and effective public transit and open green spaces and clean water and clean air. And all of those that are suffering from addiction should have the opportunity to be able to find services to overcome those addictions. And there's any number of things we can do to provide opportunities, and I will be working on that. I'll be working for you. And I would appreciate your vote next week, or tomorrow still. You can still vote tomorrow. And so I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club as well as Frederick County Progressives, and you can check out my website at marklong.us.
Let's hear it for our Democratic candidates. Thank you to the candidates. Thank you all for coming. The last day of early voting is tomorrow, and primary election day is next Tuesday, June 26th. Thank you very much.